Hi, my name is Danny McKinley, and today I'm going to be showing you how to play the cooperative card game Outpost Siberia, brand new from IDW, so stick around and I'll show you how to play it. So in Outpost Siberia, players are going to be working together as a team cooperatively to try and survive the bad deck. The way they do that is they use these double-sided cards. Most of the cards have either an event or a threat on the top, and then finally you'll have the cards that you'll be using on the bottom in orange. So I have these separated for now, but I'll show you how they work in a moment. Players will start off with one of these characters that have anywhere from 2 to 4 life. We don't have tokens in our demo copy, but the final version will come with tokens to keep track of your life. So let's say these are the 2 players playing in the game. Then you'll need to set up the deck. Based on how difficult you want it to be, you'll choose a number of good event cards, which are shown here with the blue and this guy basically hugging the air. Then you'll have bad event cards. You'll choose 12 cards total between the good and the bad event cards. Whether you want it to be harder will determine on how many you put of the bad cards versus the good cards. Finally, you have threat cards. There is a big stack of these, and these all have different events that may happen throughout the game. You're going to take all of these, plus the 12 other cards that you've chosen, and shuffle them together to make the event deck. Finally, the remaining cards will be mixed together to make the Outpost deck. On a player's turn, they're going to go through 5 phases. The very first phase is draw a card. From the Outpost deck, which normally would have the orange side facing on top, you will draw those cards. You'll draw 2 of them. One will go into the personal hand of the player who's active, and then finally, one will be laid out in front of all players called the supply. The supply can be used by all players anytime, whereas the cards kept in players' hands can be used during their turn for their combat value. The combat value is up in the top left, and that will be used for attacking or dealing with threats later in the game. Normally, since the first player does not have anything set up, they will have to encounter the threat afterwards. Because the second phase is attacking the threat, which you would take cards from your hand and use their combat value, which in this example is 3, and apply it to any of the threat cards that are currently in play. You simply do so by sliding it under the card. Then, you may use any cards from your supply. Some cards, like the flamethrower, will be required to kill certain threats. So keep that in mind. You also have an ice pick that you can use. And then there's other items such as medical kits and food and water that will be needed to survive. And they say that on the card as well. Then finally, on the next step, you flip over and deal with one of the threats. As I said, there are good events in this. In this example, you would pay 1 food. One player would be able to play that, or you would have to lose 1 life because you are using food for this event. Then finally, this says emergency surgery. Any one player recovers all of their HP. That loss of life that you might be encountering throughout the game will matter, and these will help you heal. Once that has been resolved, you put that into the universal discard pile. I say universal because all cards will be going to the same discard pile, whether they came from the Outpost deck or the event deck. Then, the next card in this example might be a bad event. In this, it's outlined in red, and this says missing flare. Once again, you have to pay 1 food or lose 1 life. And then finally, discard 1 flare from the supply if possible. Flares are used to avoid or counteract the bad actions from the threats after each round. So this says, if not, discard 1 food or water card from the supply, and still if not, you discard the top card of the Outpost deck into the discard. Once again, once these are resolved, those are gone away. But let's say you draw a threat card. Those are dictated by normally a scary creature on the front. They will have a combat value up in the top left. This has a combat value of 1. That immediately does 1 damage to any player who has not taken their turn yet. So you'd simply move their life total down. And then most of them will have a series of text on them as well. In this example, this says, the frenzied Siberian tiger, you must use a flamethrower to defeat this threat. Remember how I said certain cards were required to defeat it? After you've dealt enough combat damage to this threat, then you can use a flamethrower to discard it from play. This would be laid out in front of all players as they apply more combat value to it. This has a health, next shown by the little medical kit there, of 8. So you have to deal 8 damage to it and then use the flamethrower. Players will continue this and adding more and more threats to the game. After your turn is over, you turn your card sideways to show that it is exhausted, and then it goes on to the next player's turn. Now, turn order could be the key to survival. So it's important that you guys discuss who takes what turn in which order, because the remaining person is who normally takes the most damage and who has the last options. Now, there will still be a threat that comes out, or a bad card that comes out during their turn, so you have to deal with that accordingly. Let's say all players have taken a turn, then it becomes the end of the round. Any effects that are on any threats that are in play, like the Frenzied Siberian Tiger or Missing Medicine or any other of the threats that are available, if they have any end of round, that would take effect at that point. Now there are certain other threats that have threats like you may only use combat values of 1 or 3 to attack it, and other ones, some like the Yeti, are just big and it takes 13 damage to destroy them. Players will continue this until they are either completely done with the event deck, or they have all died, or one player has died, in which case the game is lost, or if there are ever 5 threats out in play, in which case you have lost and not survived. If you can survive the wilderness, then you'll see that Outpost Siberia is one of the most dangerous but intensive cooperative games. So check it out. So as you can see, it's definitely reliant on teamwork. It's a very strict cooperative game, but if you have what it takes, then you can possibly survive Outpost Siberia. If you want to come in and check it out, come by Zia Comics in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and we'll be happy to demo it for you.